It's a pleasure to start this very important session on the series arranged by the Department of Social Work, Shift 2 of the Madras School of Social Work on special populations. We have been dealing with the special populations, and today we are going to discuss about gender equality challenges and opportunities faced by women. I think we have been reading reports of how women have been affected, in particular by the lockdown, in several ways. One of the important ways is by which livelihoods of women have been affected, particularly domestic workers, and most of the women in the unorganized sector who have not been able to go to jobs, and their access to income, much needed income, uh, has been blocked because of this shutdown. And in addition to it, we have been reading reports of them facing domestic violence, which is supposed to have increased after the lockdown. Now, given these conditions, I think it's important to really look at whether gender equality, in what ways has it been affected, and what are the challenges and what are the opportunities we can look forward to. And we have none other than Madam Kanimozhi Karunanidhi, who is the Member of Parliament with us today. A very hearty, warm welcome to you, ma'am. We are delighted that you have consented to be part of this discussion and share views today. And Madam is, I think, is the right person today to talk to us about being the MP, Member of the Parliament. Madam has raised over more than 600 questions in her terms in the as a Member of Parliament, and has participated in more than 140 debates, of which several of them were related to women, lack of representation of women in parliament, women workers, were some of the important topics that Madam has raised questions and debated on in the parliament. We are really pleased and honored by your presence here, Madam. And a very hearty welcome to all the participants, and I appreciate the organizers for putting together this event. Over to the organizer for the next event.
Thank you, sir. We have with us our eminent speaker for the day. Ms. Kanimozhi Karunanidhi is an Indian politician, poet, and journalist. Madam is the Member of Parliament representing Thoothukudi constituency in the Lok Sabha. Madam is also the former MP and represented Tamil Nadu in the Rajya Sabha. Madam is the secretary to DMK Party's Women Wing and has successfully organized many remarkable events, including Chennai Sangamam Thiruvizha and Namma Thiruvizha. Madam has also published books named Karuvarai Vasanai, Agathinai, Parvaigal, Karukkum Marudani in Tamil. We are very honored by your presence, ma'am. We request you to take over the session.
Thank you. Vanakkam. I'm very happy to meet you all through this Zoom meeting, and I thank the MSSW and all your members to have organized something like this so that it can be a good interactive session for us, for both of us. As mentioned here earlier by the earlier speaker, yes, we have been seeing a very high rise in domestic violence all over the world, especially after this pandemic has come and taken over the world, and the entire world is in a lockdown, and women are actually forced to be at home, and there is no escape route for them out of what they are actually locked into. And the steep rise in domestic violence and their responsibilities, because we see that there is no other external support system which is able to reach them, and we've also seen that there is no other way of sharing work or getting any kind of help when it comes to their household responsibilities. And even if there is an income or not, or immaterial of the availability of things for getting the food ready, it is the woman's responsibility to make sure that she provides for the entire family, and also whatever her workload is, she is the one who is responsible to make sure that everybody's food needs and other needs inside in the family is taken care of. This puts an immense lot of pressure on the women and their support system. Like we've seen, all the like the ASHA workers and people who could have come to their aid and help in other circumstances now have been all shifted to COVID related work. So that creates a situation where they have absolutely no support system, and all the resources, all the police and everything is now focused on COVID work. So this a woman who is being battered and hurt at home has no place to turn to. Moreover, we all believe, society as a whole does believe that a man is the breadwinner of the family. So when it comes to choosing between letting go of workers, when it comes to choosing between a woman and a man, an industry or a company is more reluctant to send a man back home than a woman, because you already think that a woman is a burden and she is less capable and less efficient compared to her male counterpart. And moreover, we still haven't completely sorted out the issues which we have connected to maternity benefits, so that many companies think that is a load on them and that is a big luggage to carry. So they are more than willing to let the women workers go, unless they are industries where only women can be employed. Other than that, it is easier for the industries to let the women workers go. So their future, their economic stability also is at a big risk. And that is also creating a lot of fear among the women. And we know that this pandemic has created a big economic crisis, and families are going to be affected. Yeah, so when it comes to choosing between a boys' education and a girl's education, it is cultural, and especially in a country like India, it is very it's there in society that a boy's the son's education is much more important and relevant to the family when it compared to the girl's education. So definitely, when they cannot afford to educate the girls and the boys together, then the choice becomes that it's the son's education which is going to become important. So girls' aspirations and dreams to go to college and become an achiever is also going to be hit in a big way. That also is something we have to take into consideration. And businesses, for a woman to take care of her family and to go out and take care of her, even her small businesses, all that is a big challenge these days. So a lot of them have been forced to compromise on when it comes to, because they're locked down and they have to take care of the family's responsibilities completely, and the family is at home. So whatever they earned by going out, whatever they could do by going out, it has been come to a standstill. So that adds to their misery, and it leaves a big question when it comes to their future. And yes, we have seen studies that men get more affected by the coronavirus than the number of deaths is higher when it comes to men compared to women. But still, it's a woman who is forced. If you have to get water, Forget the task-mark shops where the men queue up for hours together and they have no issues with it. But when it goes to when it's rations, or when it is to queue up for hours to get water to the family, it is a woman who has to do it. So she gets exposed much more to the virus compared to people who are in the family, who are much more protected. And the responsibility of taking care of the older people, and in case somebody is affected in the family, it always falls on the women. So these things, and domestic violence, these are great concerns which we have to address. And I think all the governments and many organizations and not looking at this big issue, because it's going to affect these women. Like already we know at least 44% of our women have more than 44% of our women face domestic violence when without any of these circumstances. Added to this lockdown, I think the number has tripled. And in spite of that, we are not giving it a serious look. We are not looking at solutions to a problem like this. Nobody has been sensitized. The government departments in any part of the country have not been sensitized to domestic violence and harassment of women. And I think it is time, even when the parliament comes back into session. And I think they are looking at creating laws for a pandemic like situation, because we don't have enough laws in place to deal with situations like this. I think it is very important that we have to within this, we have to actually include women's safety. That should become one of the important factors which the bill should be addressing. So I think with this, I think we will start having the interactive session. And if you have anything to discuss or talk about, or give your point of view, or if you have any questions to ask, I will be happy to answer.
Thank you so much for the session, ma'am. We have a question from our principal, Dr. Raja Sanvilso. The response of state and society to the pandemic has been very generic, not taking into consideration subsections of the population, particularly the marginalized and the women. How could the state and others do better in terms of targeting interventions at women?
The problem is we don't include women in anything. When we bring a bill, or when we come out with a scheme or a welfare scheme, we never actually take into consideration, before we start implementing it, like how would you reach it to women, or to the marginalized society. We don't take that into special consideration. So given this situation, when there is a pandemic, then the response has to be generic, and that is the immediate response. I think you need to be very sensitive to take into consideration the problems faced by, like, just imagine for an to take for example the plight of our migrant workers. Nobody even bothered to give them the confidence to stay back, or wait till a proper mode of transport was organized. Nobody even bothered to reach out to them. We see them all around us. We see them working every day in front of our eyes. The governments have been seeing, but no government, the central government or the state government, nobody actually bothered to reach out to them. and give them the confidence that they can stay back and they will be taken care of. So all of them are forced, it is more than anything else. I think the first factor is fear that is making them walk thousands of kilometers to go back to their states or homes. So I think that extra sensitivity should already be there in that system. You cannot expect the government to respond very sensitively when a pandemic hits or there's a natural disaster. It becomes very difficult. I think being sensitive to these issues have to become part of the system. Everyday life has to become a little more sensitized and sensitive to things like this.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Dr. Arun Sendilram. He wants to know the advocacy measures that can be taken to deal with the problems of women, especially during COVID and post-COVID.
See, I think when it comes to some of the laws which are not adequate, we have been fighting to bring in new laws or to bring changes in the existing laws when it comes to protection of women, and especially when it comes to domestic violence and family violence. But none of the governments take that really seriously. Even when it comes to rape within a marriage, the government, I've raised this question so many times in Parliament, and I've tried to raise this issue, and we've got questions like, I've got replies like, it is not part of the Indian culture. I mean, as atrocious as that. These are the kind of replies we've got. But I think these laws have to be put in place, and these are things I'm talking the post the COVID coronavirus. Now I think the government has to make a conscious decision to have more helplines, to have to sensitize the police force and to sensitize the government and the officers and the ASHA workers to reach out to these women who are facing violence and who will be discriminated because when it comes to their workspace or if there's harassment. I think there should be a helpline, and that should actually, even when you're talking about awareness, you have all television channels, and the government has made films to spread the awareness about how to keep yourself safe from the virus. Why can't the government talk about awareness and make films and reach out to the people talking about women's harassment and domestic violence, and create an awareness about among women, saying that they do not have to tolerate this. Action will be taken against people who hurt the women.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
The next question is from Mr. Sam Sangeet. How to sensitize women to report on domestic violence to legal systems?
See, that is the problem. Like many women think that domestic violence is part of life, and it is okay. They have to put up with it, and the family also believes that this is the norm, and society accepts it very easily. And when I talk about society, the political system and everybody seems to have an acceptance when it comes to domestic violence. I think we have to make a conscious effort to create that awareness among women that they do not have to tolerate this. We have to tell them, like maybe it should become part of education also. Schools should have subjects, or they should have lessons where the children are taught that hurting a woman is it's a criminal act. And women, girl children also have to be taught that they do not have to tolerate it. You can reach out to women through self-help groups. There are so many ways to reach out to women, and I think it has to be done. There needs to be a lot of conscious effort from the government side and from organizations which work with women and who, like institutions like you. We have to, and political parties also. There is a huge responsibility from our side also to reach out to women and tell them that they do not have to tolerate this and they can report it. And one thing is, when I've heard of cases when a woman goes to the police station and reports a case of violence against her, the immediate response is to, patch up things, to make say it's okay, to convince her to go back. That is not the answer. The police has to, file the case, and they have to, respond to it responsibly. Or katta panchayat madri, you can't try to sit there and call this woman and her husband and say it's okay, it happens, so go back home, now don't hit her anymore. That is not what the police is expected to do. They have to take action, and the courts also have to be sensitized.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Mr. Anthony Stephen. Since the violence against women and children during this time has increased, what do you think can be done to address the issues with the support of state and central department with commissions related to women and children?
See, the Women's Commission, unfortunately, most of the cases don't get reported, like I just mentioned earlier also, because women are not aware. And it is accepted in society that, an elder or a man can hit his wife, or an older person can hit children. That is the way that you can correct them. So that has become part of our belief system, that violence against children and violence against women is acceptable. So that is why nobody even responds to it. So I think again and again we have to start working towards that consciousness, that understanding, and that change in society, where we have to reach out to those people and say that it is not okay to accept this. We have to stop, and the change has to happen. Unless the consciousness of the society changes when it comes to domestic violence and violence against children changes, I don't think these cases will get even reported. And sometimes what happens, and we have to put a lot of things, like if a child is faces violence, like, from the parents, and if the government is going to take action against these people, then what happens to the child? The government has to put in place some support system for these children. So it's a larger exercise which nobody is willing to do. And I think at least after the pandemic, we have to really take a keen and serious look at issues like this. And now I think, as I said, definitely the government has to, address these issues, sensitize the police department, and I think start talking about and reassuring that if there is violence against women, the government will take action. Pandemic or not, it will take action.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Dr. A. Sivagami. She wants to know what are the initiatives that can be taken to help migrant women workers undergoing a lot of struggles with their families.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I just missed it. Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
What are the initiatives that can be taken to help migrant women workers undergoing a lot of struggles with their families?
See, when you talk about migrant workers, it's just not migrant workers within India. There are women who've gone abroad to other countries, and today they're caught there, unable to return to India, and in many countries, these women are there stranded with no help, no support, and nobody is even thinking of bringing them back. They don't have, they've spent whatever little of savings they had, and it's really pathetic to listen to what is happening to them in countries where they've gone to work, and there's no way of returning home without the government support. When it comes to migrant workers, the entire situation is really bad. But when it comes to any problem, it's the women who suffer more. It's very difficult. It's somebody else who makes a decision that we walk 1,000 kilometers and go back home. But it's the woman who has to take her children, take care of her children, and whatever decision somebody else has made for her, she has to abide by that and go back, and struggle uh, to go back to her village, if it is 500 kilometers or 1,000 or whatever it is. And they are not actually equipped even physically to face these hardships. But yet she has to go by the decision made by the head of the family, or so-called head of the family. And there is and a woman cannot even make a decision to stay back, because there is other issues like harassment, and where does she go back after this her society, her family or society is not going to accept her back when she makes a decision against uh, what her husband has decided. So all these pressures are on her, and she has to go back. I think we problems like we give women, we give families rations, we've given even the migrant laborers who are traveling, we stop them, give them water, we give them food. Has anybody even thought of what a woman who's traveling this distance, if she's going to start her menstrual cycle, what happens to her? There are women in villages, especially during the lockdown when no shops were open. We know that how much these women suffered. No, nobody even thinks of things like this. We were giving masks, we were giving sanitizers. How many people even reached out to make sure that they were getting their sanitary pads? No. So I think there are so many issues which have to be addressed when it comes to uh, women, and society still has not bothered to think about all these things.
Thank you, ma'am. Before we move on to the next question, I request all the participants to turn on your video so that we can have a face-to-face chat for this. Ma'am, the next question is from Ms. Bhuneshwari Ramesh. May I know the reason why this session on gender equality was narrowed down to women alone and not widened up to the third gender? And can you throw light on measures taken to protect the destituted transgenders during COVID?
Sorry, can you repeat the first part of the question?
Why the person wants to know why the gender equality is narrowed down to women and not widened up to the third gender.
I was given to understand that this is the topic you had chosen and given to us, and this is what was to be discussed. So we cannot always club I mean, this is my personal opinion. We cannot always club women and so like we always club women and children together. I understand, society in society, it is the biological mother who or the mother who takes care of the children, and but it doesn't have to be always clubbed, women and children together. I think we have to learn to widen up and understand children's needs, and their rights are quite different from what a woman's needs and rights are. But the government, all institutions, everything, all of us, it's in our mind to club these two together. There are, situations where it has to be clubbed together. But the same way, I think clubbing third gender and women always together is not a necessity, because their problems, a woman, whatever it is, we are accepted in society. We are seen as a normal. The way we are treated, yes, that leaves a lot to question. But I think the problems women face is very different from what the third gender faces. So we cannot, I think we have to discuss the problems faced by third gender and, you know, in depth and in detail. But it doesn't mean that we can club it together and then look at both these issues together all the time. But of course, I don't have any problems with, talking about them also in this discussion. Uh, Third gender, when we talk about them, it's always much more than women. Its acceptance in society is a big challenge. And the next thing for them is employability. How many industries, how many places there are? I mean, I do not deny that society is changing a little bit, but still, how many people will employ them, and where do they get jobs? And their education itself is a big question. So their problems are much more. They already don't have jobs. Now the lockdown has completely, made them curtail them into their homes. They can't go out to, get whatever jobs they could find, because many of them were earning, daily. They were daily wage earners, unlike, very few of them who could get employed on a regular basis. So this has put them in much more struggle for sustenance itself. So we really cannot, club it together. We have to reach out to them and help them, and that is what we are also trying to do when we reach out to people to help them. We try to reach out, we make a conscious effort to reach out to the third gender.
Thank you, ma'am. So the next question is, since the work from home has become the new normal, women have to multitask. So what are your suggestions to ease these kind of situations and maintain a healthy work-life balance for working women?
Teach the men at home to be more responsible and take more responsibility when it comes to, household responsibilities, which I think we haven't done that. I mean, most of the families, I think the women do all the work, and men don't even, they can't even think that it's their responsibility to, share household responsibilities and work. So I think somewhere women have to start putting their foot down and saying that, it is your job also to run the house, and running the house is just not bringing in money. It is sharing the household chores also. And women, I think, have to make a conscious decision to bring up, I mean, because still bringing up children is predominantly women's responsibility. I think we have to start bringing up our male child and our female child on the same level. we wouldn't, many of the families can't dream of not teaching a girl child, not cooking or household chores. But when it comes to a boy, he's just let free. So I think we have to make a conscious decision also to do that. And maybe education system in schools also, like when they teach them hobbies, when they teach them extracurricular activities, I think boys and girls should be taught basic cooking and you know something like that.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Mr. Deepak. Post-COVID, many girl children may be forced to marriage or child labor. Can you throw light on the steps taken by government or programs offered by government for girl children to pursue their dreams?
It is a fact that because families will have a lot of economic downslide, and they will start sending more children to work, which actually we've in a way a little quite successfully addressed after many years of work. But again, now this is a big fear that child labor, and when it comes to child labor, girl children being taken out of schools and sent to work looms large in front of us. And see, in Tamil Nadu, I think when it comes to education, it is free when it comes to the government schools, and there are schemes like to intensify, incentivize the family. The government brought I think in the DMK rule, they brought this thing like if you educate your daughter till the 10th, then because families think it's more important to get the daughter married than educated. So if you at least let her finish her 10th, then we'll help you when it comes to her marriage. We'll give you money. So that actually did help a lot of girls to go to school. And I think later cycles, that was becoming an issue. Traveling to school was becoming an issue. So students got cycle, and especially the girls were given cycles. So there are many schemes which are there to make sure that the girl child's education is protected. But when it comes to sending them to school, or because school doesn't bring you revenue, but sending the child to work brings a revenue to the family. So I think the government has to make sure that these children are not sent to work. And the noon meal scheme was also a project to make sure children come to school, because they do not go to work because there's no food at home. So I think there are a lot of schemes, and we have to, as the problems come up, we have to look at solutions. Only after that we can resolve this issue.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, how to deal with women who have a fear of losing their family or losing their family members? How to cope up in COVID scenario during lockdown?
Losing family members, you mean to COVID, or because they complain of harassment? What do you mean?
Probably due to the COVID scenario, ma'am.
I think that fear is there for all of us, losing somebody dear to us. And yes, sometimes when you have children to take care of, and you haven't been allowed to work, and if you're going to lose the sole breadwinner of the family, then everything becomes a big question, where, and your children's future becomes a big question, and how do you manage? This is something I think we cannot really find answers to it today. But women have to have the confidence that they have overcome a lot. They have faced a lot. It's no woman faces an easy life, even if they're made to believe that it's a protected life. It is not. There's so much of harassment, there's so much of violence, there's so much of suppression, and in spite of all that, a woman is what she is. So whatever it is, I think it is more important to have the confidence that you will overcome and you will be able to come out of it.
Professor Damon Quinn has asked this question, ma'am. She says women's unpaid care work has immense economic value, but unfortunately, this has not been acknowledged in our society. Do you think the lockdown would have changed the perspective?
I don't think so at all. I mean, our work is only taken for granted. I definitely don't think it has made many people sensitive. Yes, people, some of them are talking about it, but it doesn't mean that as a society we become more sensitive to the work women do at home. But there people are there at home, maybe before you didn't realize how much of work a woman does at home, because you leave in the morning and you come back and you think that she's at home, twiddling her thumbs or watching television. That is what people believe. But now you're there to see it, how much work they do. But I really don't think it's made people respect women more and realize how much they give a family. Because if that respect has been created, if people have understood and if the scenario has changed, then why would the domestic violence increase to this extent? When you respect somebody, I don't think you can ever be violent.
That was an interesting answer, ma'am. The next question is quite inspired from you, ma'am. So this person wants to know how to become a resilient and strong woman and inspire others like you.
I think first thing is we've all been, I mean, it wasn't, and it isn't easy also. It's a struggle for society, and centuries of, passed on so-called knowledge has taught us that this is a woman. This is the way you behave. This is the way you sit, the way you speak, and these are your responsibilities, and these are the lines you cannot cross. And this is how you behave, and these are the things you believe in. But at some point, I think we have to sit down and say, enough is enough. I'm going to break all this. It will hurt, because people around you are not going to accept when you want to change, because you're pulling them out of their comfort zone also. So it is going to hurt you. I mean, even recently when a colleague of mine was insulted on television, and I was just speaking to her after that. I said, we have to have the strength. Yes, I mean, this is not acceptable. We condemn it, everything. But then we are not going to be able to stop everybody. And because we're not able to stop everybody, we cannot stop ourselves and be at home, because we will be hurt. So you have to learn to go beyond this, to ignore, things people talk about. I mean, she gave me a very beautiful answer. She said, yes, now, I mean, I've heard so much of it again and again and again. Now it doesn't matter at all, but it is just that it is not right that we have to fight. And it is not because I am hurt. I think women have to come to that point. We have to ignore. We have to let it go. Let it go in our minds. Doesn't mean that you have to let it go and let the other forgive the other person and let them go. If you have to go and complain in the police station, you should do it. If you have to go to the authorities, you should do it. That is a different fight. But you should not let it affect you, because nobody in the society has the right or the locus standi to sit there and give a judgment about who you are. You should start defining who you are, and you should say that nothing matters. Like Periyar always said, once you're in public life, there's no shame. Just because you are a man or a woman doesn't change that. You will be insulted when you have something different to say from what people have believed, or what is not convenient to them, or is not convenient to the political party against you, or ideologically different institution. They will insult you, they will target you. And when it comes to a woman, character assassination and personal attacks are the norm today, everywhere. So I think women should learn to ignore. I'm not saying we have to accept it. We have to fight against it. But mentally, within ourselves, we have to find the strength to ignore it and say, my target, the place I have to reach, and the change I want to bring is different. I will not let all this deter. So I think only that, the inner strength which you find, will take you there. Nothing else. Nobody else can do that for you.
Thank you, ma'am. That's quite inspiring. So the next question is about migrant women workers. Migrant women workers in the unorganized sector face exploitation and violence. Most of this is unreported due to the fear and threat from the perpetrators. With the challenges faced in addressing the COVID situation, how can we address these issues as policymakers and civil society?
See, when it comes to harassment of women in workplaces, there are laws. Laws have been made, and it has been passed. But the problem is, when you talk about harassment, still the first question society turns around to ask you, and even sometimes sadly the law enforcement authorities ask you, and is, why was she there? Why did she keep quiet? If it started the day before yesterday, what was she doing for 2 days? If it started 1 year ago, why was she keeping quiet for 1 year? So it always, you become the target. So that is one fear which most of these women have, when it comes to reporting. The next thing is losing your job. Because, when you're a migrant worker, you've traveled so much, you've given up so much, you've left your family, everything, and you're here. And to lose this job is not an easy thing for them. You don't have the support of your family also to go back to and say that what's happening, what you're suffering. And you don't have a support system at all. So I think that becomes a bigger challenge for them. But harassment of women, sexual harassment of women in workplaces is not a thing which is rare. It is something which happens in every field, everywhere, and it's nearly a daily occurrence, sadly. But we are not prepared to take it seriously and address it, because once you complain, it becomes a challenge for the woman to prove it. It becomes a challenge, and it becomes so difficult for her to continue to work in that space. So I think post the pandemic, the virus, we have to bring in laws which will protect the woman, which will make sure that when she complains, that she is protected. Once a woman complains, they cannot throw her out of her job. Once a woman complains, her job security and her security is assured. I think that is very important.
Thank you, ma'am. There are a couple of questions where the participants want to know about uh, women's participation in politics and the representation of women in decision making in the parliament.
Like I always say that the women's reservation bill, I think it is one bill which most of the parties support, and it's a part of their manifesto. But it's one bill in reality nobody supports, and it is a bill which is, you know, not being brought to parliament in spite of everybody's support or so-called support. I have raised this so many times in the all-party leaders meeting, in front of the Prime Minister also, that even in the list of businesses, the women's reservation bill has not been brought, and it is actually in the BJP manifesto to bring this bill and pass it in parliament. The Congress supporters, most of the major parties support this bill, and they want the bill. They say that this bill should be passed, but this bill has not been brought. It was passed in Rajya Sabha, and then it hasn't been brought to the Lok Sabha, and we haven't been able to pass it. This Lok Sabha, there has been a slight improvement. There are 78 women parliament members, but that is hardly around 14% of the entire parliamentarians is women. And when you talk about assemblies, it's even less. See, it's not political parties believe that it is, and of course, in a way, women do not have the access to the spending capacity, to the family. When it comes to an election, it is a costly thing. It is an expensive affair, and when it is within a family, I think when a man is contesting the election, the support. The financial support the family is prepared to put behind a man is much less when it is a woman. So political parties believe that men are better bets. So I don't think they would really field more women candidates as a whole, nationwide. All the political parties will just decide and do that unless this bill is passed. We have more women in the local bodies. It is because 33% was brought in, now it is 50%. Same way, I think the bill has to be passed. Otherwise, you can't expect the political parties to come forward and do it. And it is very important that there is enough women representation, because the bills we pass, the laws we make affect women also. But with only 14% of women voices heard there, how can any bill which is being passed or any issue which is being discussed have enough opinions and ideas and inputs from women and their perspective to pass a bill or bring a law or enact a law? So I think it is much more important. And now that after this, we realize how much women suffer when there is something which is unexpected which happens. And I think at least after this, I think it is more important to make sure that this 33% women's reservation bill be passed and more women's voices heard, and our opinions are also included in lawmaking.
Thank you, ma'am. So we have the last two questions. Ms. Harisha M wants to know your view on Dalit women in terms of gender equality, as they are facing multiple forms of discrimination.
See, we can claim that society has changed and we are progressing and moving away from discrimination and caste based issues. But when it comes to the ground reality, we know the discrimination against Dalits, and the truth that untouchability is still there and we haven't wished it away, in spite of all the work which has been done. And sadly, in some places, we can see it coming back also much more strongly. And when it comes to women, it's always double. The impact and the suffering becomes when you are a community which is discriminated against. The violence against that community, when it is a woman, she's an easy target. When it comes to a communal clash, why do women get affected more? Why are women targeted? Why are rapes targeted against women in these clashes? It is because they can become easy targets, and the revenge against them is much more. So we cannot deny the fact that there is discrimination, caste-wise discrimination against the Dalits still, and we cannot deny the fact that the women suffer much more. The suffering they go through is multidimensional. It's just not like there is when it comes to education, when it comes to classrooms, when it comes to work, when it comes to the kind of work they are offered, when it comes to marriage, when it comes to choice. So, and when it comes to domestic violence and sexual harassment, it is much more. So we have to accept this truth. Only when we accept that this is the truth, that we can look at solutions. If we are going to fool ourselves as a society and as a government and as a political entity that we've done away with all this, then we can't start looking at solutions.
Thank you, ma'am. We've come to the last question. Yeah. It is a request from the participant. Since you have successfully organized Chennai Sangamam during Pongal, is it possible to organize COVID Sangamam for folk artists using online platforms, which can benefit them economically?
Honestly, I never thought about it. I think it's a good suggestion, and but of course, it will take a lot of organizing and work from different parts of the state. I will definitely take this suggestion seriously and try to work around it and see how much of it is possible. Thank you for the suggestion. It's a really good suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The session was highly enlightening and very much enriched with knowledge. I request you to give the closing remarks for the session, ma'am.
Thank you. And I think the questions were really challenging, and it made me think, and very interesting. Of course, I would have liked to see the people who are asking the questions. I think some glitch and I was not able to see most of them. I think we have to work together and try. First thing is awareness, because people don't. If I don't know that I have a right to ask questions, I have a right to be treated equally, I have a right to have my own space and create my space in society, and I have a right to be treated with respect, and I have a right to be equal. If I am not aware of that, then nothing can change. So, and I think this awareness is not only to be targeted towards women. I think men and women have to be made aware. And I think all of us, political parties, the government, organizations and institutions like you, I think all of us have to work together to create that awareness I think that awareness is the first change. And after that, I think when you have, I mean, to be very honest with you, see, only when there is a demand from society do political parties or the governments respond to it. If there is no demand, if we do not ask questions, they are not going to be bothered. That kind of sensitivity is not there in society. Yes, there are governments, there are people, there have been leaders, there are leaders who are, beyond that, but not everybody. So I think once the awareness comes to society, then when we start demanding, then the change will happen. I think so. I think we should start working towards that. And definitely, for my part, as a member of parliament, I will keep pushing for the laws to change, and I will keep pushing for more awareness and sensitizing the government. And even after this, if you have suggestions when some laws are going to be brought, or if you think there are some private members bills which we should work on, to bring to parliament, or if you have any questions you would want to ask the government, and if you want to put it through me, and I mean, if we can come to an agreement with those questions, I'm sure I would like to work with you, and I will do it. I'd be very happy to do that, and we can work together. And people working in the ground and interacting with the people much more, and a lot of young people especially. I think your perspectives are also very, very important. So I would like to know what your feedback is, and what I would like to continue working with you. Just not this meeting, but regularly. I would be very happy to work with you. Thank you.